The people that I talked about before in Project 2025 were on the outskirts of the executive office of the president. Now we get into the actual office. And the first person on the chopping block is the president of the United States. They want to take the power of all the federal agencies and bring them back into the White House. Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution makes it abundantly clear that the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. Okay. When George Washington in 1789, when he was sworn in as president, he said to himself, hey, yes, I have all the powers to make all of the decisions that's going to affect this country, but I don't have time to do all of this. So I need to put some people in place that can help me out. The cabinet was not created. George Washington created it. So what he said was, I can't deal with money on a regular basis, so let me get Alexander Hamilton, who I know can deal with money, and made him Secretary of Treasury. You know, I was the commander-in-chief, and I did win a war against a large British Navy and Army with just some ragtag troops, but I don't have time for regular Army stuff. So let me get Henry Knox to do the war stuff. And he became what is now the Defense Secretary. And you know what? We got to deal with France, England, Spain. We owe the Dutch. We owe the Netherlands. We owe a lot of people some money. And I just don't have time to deal with all the different states out there. So let me get somebody that's good in foreign affairs and foreign relations that can deal with it. Thomas Jefferson, he's a good guy. So he became the Secretary of State. So over time, as the country got bigger, the president needed more and more departments. Department of Education, Department of Veteran Affairs, Department of Native American Affairs or Indian Affairs or whatever. So as the country got bigger, the president needed more advisors. They're trying to bring it all back into the president. And how do I know that? The president, when it's italicized, that means the president alone. The president must set and enforce a plan for the executive branch. Sadly, however, a president today assumes office to find a sprawling federal bureaucracy that all too often is carrying out its own policy plans and preferences, or worse yet, the policy plans and preferences of a radical, supposedly woke faction of the country. Again, they know they just can't fire all the people that don't agree with them. It's very hard to fire a civil service person, especially when they've gone past their probationary period. So what they're trying to do is say, hey, we understand that, hey, maybe all the departments got a lot of woke people serving in there. We need to bring it back to the White House because now we can control the agenda. Because maybe when we walk into the presidency, everybody in those other agencies may not fully agree with us. So we got to make sure we put people in place and make sure that the president alone can set those agendas. And if he can't, his people are on the same mindset as him to do it for him in his absence. Now here's the tricky part. Once they consolidate government back to the White House, the executive office of the president, once they get that in there, then they want that president to then send it back to the states, to the quote-unquote American people. The great challenge confronting a conservative president is the existential need for aggressive use of the vast powers of the executive branch to return power, including power currently held by the executive branch, to the American people. Now there's another tricky part to that, because once the president gets all that power, listen to this. Success in meeting that challenge will require a rare combination of boldness and self-denial. Boldness to bend or break the bureaucracy to the presidential will, and self-denial to use the bureaucratic machine to send power away from Washington and back to America's families, faith communities, local governments, and states. And what political party controls most of the state governments? I'll wait. The self-denial part is the scary part, because George Washington is one of the greatest people since Cincinnatus. You gotta look him up. He gave up power. When George Washington was the commander-in-chief, he gave it up. When he was president, he gave it up. He was always reluctant to have power. They're saying that the person that's gonna be next, Donald Trump or whomever, has to have self-denial to take all that power that's invested to him by the Constitution and gladly give it back to the states. How many people you know that's going to be like okay with taking that power and giving it up? Only a few special people in the world has done it. And you think Donald Trump or some conservative is going to say, hey, I got all this power and you want me to give it back to some bumpkin in Mississippi? No, I'm going to keep it.
He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one.
What do you think? There's a lot more. We haven't even scratched the surface yet. If you want more, just say more in the comments.